Сайн байцгаана уу хүнд үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Английн Globe Shakespeare театрын хоёр жүжигчин Naeem Hayat and Phoebe Fildes нар оролцож байна. Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Mongolia.
Thank you so much.
You have a very interesting mission. Please tell us about this mission, Globe Theatre on tour. Maybe you start?
Yes. So about 2 years ago, in 2012, 3 years ago, the artistic director of the Globe Theatre, which is in London, his name is Dominic Dromgoole, conceived an idea to take a production of Hamlet by William Shakespeare to visit every nation on the planet. So we have now visited 121 countries. Yeah. Mongolia is our 122nd country, and we have around another 80 countries to visit. The tour began on the 23rd of April in 2014, which commemorates the birthday of William Shakespeare, and it will end 2 years later to the date, which also commemorates the exact day that he died. So it's really a celebration of the life of Shakespeare.
122 countries, and how do you find? Have you been keep traveling all the time, or you sometimes go back, or how does the schedule work?
We get so we do around maybe 8 weeks normally. It can differ. Sort of can go anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks of traveling, and then we go home for a short 2-week break. Just to see your family and see if you have any friends left. But we do get breaks in between. So it's not 2 years of constant travelling, but it's very fast.
Please tell us last few days travelling. From which country you came and now where you go?
Actually, funnily enough, at the moment we're travelling very slowly for us. Most often we have to move very quickly from country to country. But the last few days, we spent a whole week in Beijing, which for us, that's the longest we've ever spent anywhere. So that was a real luxury.
What was the reason?
We were performing in
the National Theatre there. National Theatre in China, and then they have a very special relationship with the Globe. The festival that Phoebe was talking about 2 years ago, the National Theatre of China brought a production of Richard III in Mandarin. So it's a way of keeping those kind of cultural relationships alive.
I see. You have been performing only in Beijing or somewhere else?
We also performed in Shanghai in China, but that is quite unusual. Like Naim says, most often we only perform in. We only have. Yeah, unfortunately, our schedule only allows us to visit one venue most often in each country.
You will perform in Ulaanbaatar once in our drama theatre.
Yes.
And it will be in English, isn't it?
That's right.
And they will have a screen with
I think so, yes.
I think so,
subtitles.
With subtitles, yeah. So it either works one of two ways, really. One is that there are line-by-line subtitles. So every time a line of text is said, there'll be a line of subtitles, surtitles to accompany it, or there'll be a scene synopsis. So kind of describing the scene while it's played out.
But also in many countries there are no subtitles at all, even though the audience may not be English speaking. So that's interesting. Like a lot of Africa where we played, there would often be no subtitles at all, and we would have to work really hard to make sure that our audience kind of were with us.
In English native speaking Africa?
Well, in some countries where English is the first language, but also in many countries, not only in Africa but throughout the world, where English is a second or third language.
Well, Shakespeare himself been like to any nation in the world, well known to Mongolia. We have been taught in school about his work, and Hamlet was first performed in Mongolia, well, when in 1980.
Okay.
I mean, yes. Then somehow people. Initially, there was a translation from Russian. Then it was in Mongolian, and I think people who will know about the performance itself. But how do you find? Have you been preparing in Mongolia already, performing?
Well, this evening, as we speak, actually, the actors will currently be at the venue now. And before each performance, we have, we call it a kind of cue-to-cue rehearsal. So it allows the actors time to really kind of get to know the space, because each venue we play is very different. And they'll be doing things like playing some of the music. There's a lot of music in our show. Making sure the sound levels are okay. Kind of, it's really an initiation for the actors to kind of get to know the space before they play it. So that's kind of the only rehearsal we're allowed in each country. Other than that, it's very new, and that makes it really exciting for us.
Before we go to Hamlet, that you are performing, you are playing in many roles there, if not in Mongolia, in anywhere you go, right? Why Shakespeare is a so important figure in the UK, in English literature?
That's a very good question. I think there's many things, actually. I think one of them is that his stories are so human. They're so instantly recognizable in a way, you know. Like Phoebe was saying about playing without subtitles sometimes. It's often that people recognize moments in the show because they know, you know, they know the to be or not to be moment. And that's without having been a native English speaker, or it's because there's something about the way he writes people. He writes without judgment, so he presents all of the characters in all of their facets, you know. The good guys, the bad guys, the parents, the lovers, he presents everybody and allows the audience to make up their own minds about what they think about those people and how they interact with each other. And that's a very it's a very liberating thing for an actor, because it does so much of the work for you. But as an audience member, it's so refreshing. And that's why you have so many conflicting views about Hamlet, even Hamlet as a character, you know.
Well, I think the things Shakespeare explores in his plays are, like Naeem says, are such universal things that people can relate to in every corner of the earth. I mean, in many of his plays, but in Hamlet he writes about family, love, revenge, politics, corruption, almost any kind of substantial, significant theme of life is kind of in the text. It's all there. So I think Shakespeare has a fascinating way of exposing things in a way that is very kind of, it really hits home very keenly to each individual in a different way. And I think that's why, for us, it's the perfect play to take to every country in the world, because there's something in it that speaks to everybody.
I think each of his 37 dramas he made gets not only native English speaker, but people who likes English, who loves, who studies English, very much closer to your history, to the habits, traditions in the country, along with the topics you have just now described. So playing Hamlet, as you said now, corruption, you know, all this enemies, you know, intrigues. These plays are always actual. It may happen in any way, you know, in different form, but that's what always remaining with society, with living, with life. And when you playing, for example, Naeem, you play Hamlet, where you feel really something that drives you in a way that just now we have described it?
There are lots of places, lots of examples of that, but the most potent for me was we played the show in Ukraine, in Kiev, on the eve of their presidential election, with the now current president, Petro Poroshenko, in the audience. And we'd spent the day before, on our day off, travelling around Kiev, and we went to Maidan Square to see where the revolution started. And it's moments like that where reality of a country or a situation, or the political stability of a country, combined with the imaginary world of the play, you they suddenly become very potent when they mix together like that. Because there was a moment during the to be or not to be speech where Hamlet talks about taking up arms against a sea of troubles. And for a moment, looking out at the audience, I had a real moment of realization that these people were people who had decided to, in their very recent history, to take up arms against what they considered were a sea of troubles. And so there was it felt like a very special, electric moment, actually. It's quite hard to describe, even now as I'm talking to you, I'm picturing it in my mind, but it never quite sounds the same as the experience. And that's sort of part of this whole adventure as well, is that you have so many memories which change and shape themselves again into different things. So it's often very hard to actually condense it into something which you can simply explain, actually.
How do you find that in your role?
I've similar to Naeem, I've had a few kind of standout electric moments, but for me the thing that this journey has kind of encouraged me to consider, playing primarily female roles, I mainly play Ophelia and Gertrude, has been to do with the women's role, and more particularly women's role or women's accessibility to play in theatre. And there have been a number of countries so far. The one that sticks out for me is in the Solomon Islands. We met after the show, I met a group of young girls who had created the first ever theatre troupe which allowed women to be on stage. And actually meeting them was both really inspiring but also really eye-opening, because I think as a female actor in London you really take for granted the privilege you have to be on stage without question. And I'm sure that there'll be plenty more countries to visit where women being on stage is a contentious issue. And it has been really, it kind of really forces you to assess each of the countries you go, how women fit into those cultures and what their role is, and to respect that, and also to question it. And yeah, I think that's probably been the most thing that's followed my journey the most.
Have you been playing to the Middle East countries?
We haven't yet.
We haven't yet, no.
I think we will be going in maybe around 3 months' time, I think.
Yeah, that will be even worse than the situation. Naeem, being Pakistani, born in London, your parents from Pakistan, what is your expectation to play? You are obviously British citizen, British man, but playing in Pakistan, how do you imagine that?
I have no idea. I have no idea what it's going to be. It'll be very, very special. Very special, because it's been a while since I've been back. It's been a good few years since I've been back, because I sort of studied for a period of time, which meant I couldn't leave England. I didn't really go on many holidays or anything. But I can only relate it to the places that we've been with other members of the company. So, for example, Laddie, who also plays Hamlet, is originally from Lagos, Nigeria.
I see.
And Jen, who plays Ophelia and Horatio and other parts, is from Hong Kong. And we're about to go there, and we've been to Cuba and Jamaica, where Amanda is from. So I can only really connect it to what it was like to be part of the company when we were visiting those places with those members of the company, and it was so special. And you can see there's a different feeling around the company. There's a different feeling around being in that place, because you realise it means so much to the.
Your play is powerful. The hero is powerful, and yet the audience, same origin people, are watching how much you will be empowering the young people to be strong, to.
I think that's a really special thing.
That's the special thing, I think.
Amanda, who Naeem talked about, she plays similar roles to me. So Ophelia, Gertrude, Horatio. She's the girl that's half Jamaican, half Cuban heritage. But she always says that what she finds really special about being a mixed race performer is going to countries and knowing that there'll be people in the audience who are able to look at people on stage and say there's somebody there that looks like me, because she said that as a young person growing up, often she'd go to the theatres, particularly Shakespeare plays, and there would be nobody on the stage that looked like her at all. So I think what we're really proud of with this production is taking a company of mixed heritage actors around the world and hopefully inspiring people from all different corners of the planet.
You do, actually. Every time, I mean, I go to London, I see one of the shows, new shows usually I try. Last one was the show was not old, but not very fresh, but I mean new. I mean,
yes.
But I saw Margaret Thatcher.
Oh yes.
Last year, very inspiring. In particular, I like her teachings or economic views. I know that not many people share in the UK sometimes, but see, again, the impact of the powerful plays, classical, 400, 500 years ago, it's written, and still it's echoing with our problems we face today. And you guys, you young people are very important in that because you are making them alive. You're connecting these old pieces with current audience, get them feeling, be together, all this betray, everything.
Yeah.
Why you guys have, let me start from you, why you have decided to be an actor?
Oh God. That's a good question. Probably because I couldn't do anything else. I really liked stories when I was a kid. I really loved stories. I loved reading stories and, playmaking. And I also realized when I was quite young, I realized that I could mimic people. I really enjoyed mimicking people.
Okay.
And my older brother, I'm one of 7 siblings.
Okay.
So I have 2 brothers and 4 sisters. And my older brother always used to tell me off. Because whenever his friends used to come to the house, I'd always sit with them, but then about half an hour in, I'd start to mimic them because I just found it fascinating to watch them and then recreate how they behaved. And he always used to tell me off and bully me for that. And then suddenly I realised that's something I really enjoy it. It's quite fun to,
And the parents, have they been supportive or?
Incredibly supportive, incredibly supportive. I mean, I'm the first kind of creative person of any kind in my family. There are no writers or actors or musicians or poets or anybody. But they've always been incredibly liberal and incredibly supportive in not necessarily, understanding what it is that I'm trying to do, but being more than happy to allow me to do that.
Was it difficult to go to have entry to RADA?
I mean, as difficult it is to go to any...
It's a competitive school to get into.
Yeah, Royal Academy of Dramatic Theatre.
Dramatic art, yes.
Dramatic
yes.
art,
Yes.
It was. I mean, it was four rounds of auditions.
Okay.
And 3 years of training.
Wow. Before
this job.
Wow.
I had a lovely time there. It was very inspiring, very challenging. But it's something that it's a very special thing, I think, in England, is that the training that actors receive across the board, not just at RADA, but across the board, which is why I think there is a certain standard amongst British actors which is appealing to, you see a high rise in British actors working in the US and in Hollywood, and it's, I think, because there is a standard of work ethic and training, which is a good solid foundation, which I think is a very important kind of export in a way, in terms of British actors.
I see. How about you?
I got into performing through music. I started, I played the violin since I was about 3 years old, and I used to want to be a violin player.
Because parents or?
No, because I actually asked for a violin for Christmas when I was 3, and my mum bought me like a toy Fisher-Price one, and I had a tantrum and said, no, I don't want that. I want a real violin. So I think it was me that, I don't know why, but as a 3-year-old I was desperate to play the violin. My cousin, who is now, and was then, is a professional violin player, so that must have had something to do with it. Anyway, so I played the violin for a number of years, and then I started to sing, and I realised the more I performed in musical theatre, singing, that what it was about the song that I enjoyed the most was the communication of the story and the expressing of a person's situation. And I still absolutely love singing, and I'd love to do musical theatre again, but equally I find as satisfying the kind of storytelling element that is in song, in text as well. So,
but in the job now you are with the Globe, Shakespeare Globe Theatre, right?
Yes.
In the middle of London, the same old place which was built first by Shakespeare himself and later on a fire, then reconstructed again. What is your feeling? You come to the place. It's like your job.
It is, and I have to say, it does. Yeah. Each time you, I mean, I personally have only performed on the stage there 3 times at the beginning of this tour. But each time I even just walk into the building, it does send shivers down my spine. It is such a unique space, and to actually have the opportunity to perform in it. I've seen so many shows there. Being part of the audience is electric because, as you know, the energy is just extraordinary. You've got 700 people, you know, crammed into the yard, all standing up, and I think that's really nice. Is that the people that pay the least for the tickets are the closest to the front. I think that's brilliant, and it's the energy is just fantastic. So to actually perform with receiving that kind of electricity from the audience is just one of the best feelings.
It's a kind of closest, most evocative recreation of what you feel like it must have been like for the actors at that time, because like Phoebe was saying, the energy is so palpable, and it's less so in a lot of theatres. You know, there's the lights go black and then everybody sits very comfortably in their comfortable chairs and they watch the actors working, and there's a kind of separation between the actor and the audience. Yes. But that doesn't seem to happen at the Globe, because like Phoebe says, there are 700 people standing,
it's open there,
leaning,
sitting
on the stage
like next to you.
I think that is there is something very special about being able to see everybody's faces. So often plays are performed in broad daylight, but at night time there's lighting to try and replicate natural light. But you can always see into the eyes of every single person, and like you said, there might be people leaning on the front of the stage. You can look right into their eyes, and that's something we try to recreate as much as we can in each venue. So, for example, tonight in the theatre, they will leave the house lights on just enough so that the actors, particularly Hamlet, who speaks so much to the audience, can actually see the people he's talking to. Otherwise, it makes it very hard when you're trying to address the audience directly if you can't see them.
And does it cause any kind of special effort from you because the location or dislocation of microphones, it's often there in that theatre, in the Globe Theatre?
That's right. Do you mean...
because the microphone probably not all around, and it is, you have especially to be very powerful to outreach the audience.
Well, that's there are no microphones in the Globe, are they?
No, there aren't. So the way it's built, it's a
but
very...
so the hearing was good.
Yeah, so the acoustic is good because I think it's to do with the circularity.
That's why, that's the reason.
Because the audience go all around and the sound, it is a very surprising, you do have to work hard to reach people right at the back.
Yeah, I was always amazed. I mean, I studied in the US, but when I see the bird speaking, you speaking, then you stop at the end of the word. Maybe you have been not noticing yourself, but compared with Australia, America, you stop after each word. And it makes probably the words sound very clear.
Oh, okay, yes.
That's why I think in the theater, when you artificially give very clear-cut words, sometimes it goes very well, you see?
Yes.
Very interesting question. You have been playing Gertrude, Ophelia, this mother, and the 2 generations difference, right?
Yes.
Was it difficult to switch between generations?
Yes, it was very difficult. Really difficult. I began playing Ophelia and I started to play Gertrude a tiny bit after. So it was really hard going from trying to kind of capture like the essence of Ophelia, of naivety and youthfulness and all these kind of beautiful, untarnished virtues in Ophelia, and then trying to capture the complexity of Gertrude. You know, she has all these, and actually the thing about Gertrude I think that's difficult is that you have to really understand
what she has gone through.
Yes, what she's gone through and how that motivates her. And I think for me that was really difficult at first, trying to I think it's because you've gone from one mindset of trying not, with Ophelia, the director was constantly saying to me, don't overcomplicate things, keep things very simple. And I just got into that mindset, and then suddenly I was trying to, dig down into these deep emotional complexities of Gertrude. But now I really love the challenge of, there might be one day where in the afternoon you play Ophelia, and then that evening you play Gertrude, and I love that now.
This young man is your son.
Yeah, you have to try and remember which each time.
That's a part of also your profession.
Yes.
I think for making the world better, what you do is so important. In particular, we talk about between races, religious beliefs, continents, and what you do now. You're traveling around the world, presenting the wonderful piece of art. Do you feel that importance that you make the world better?
Well, I don't. I'd be very hesitant to say that we feel any kind of importance in ourselves. What I think is at the core of the tour is a spirit of sharing and of playing and of storytelling, because stories are such a beautiful, brilliant way to develop your own, sense of identity. And so, like you were saying earlier on about, whether we inspire any of the people that will hopefully see the show, part of it is, I think, is inspiring people to begin to tell their own stories. Do you know what I mean? As in we share a story which is very unique, universal, but also very, British and very, there's a quintessentialness about that story and Shakespeare as a man. But part of it is also saying, this is our story, now you tell us one of your stories.
What's your story? Okay.
Or inspire the young people to go and write their own stories, because sometimes, you can get clouded and think, oh no, I don't have anything to tell. This is a much better story than I could possibly tell. But maybe, and who knows, but maybe seeing this, they'll say, oh, there's something very Mongolian about this, or there's something very Kazakhstani about this, or there's something very, and hopefully then you inspire those young people to write their own stories.
What is my last question to both of you, what is the most important feature or character to be an actor? What is the most important character?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'll say the one I'm thinking of because it's the first one I thought of, so that must make it important. I think being observant, no, that's not enough. Being observant, and this is two things, and committed to finding something beyond what you see on the surface, I think is very important. So being
observing and being committed.
Yes.
How about you?
Oh God, so many. I think keeping a sense of your childish play.
Sense of humour.
That's sense of humour.
Okay.
Because when we're children,
mimicking.
Yes. Because when we're children, we play very easily. We imagine things.
Okay.
If you have a stick, it becomes a sword, and that's it. It's a sword. You don't question that it's not a sword.
Yes.
That's
and you want to keep that as an adult. You want to keep some sense of that.
I'm very happy with the two answers.
There you go.
I would like to thank you both.
Thank you,
thank you for having us.
Coming to Mongolia.
Thank you.
Sharing, as you said, your emotion and feeling through these roles you have, and being with us. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thanks
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. За хүн төзөгчтэй өнөөдөр манай de facto нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Английн алдартай Shakespeareийн Глоб театрын хоёр алдартай жүжигчид оролцлоо их баярлалаа.